Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome back to Favourites Week, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favourite plays. So I found it much harder to pick my top 5 favourite plays than I did the rest of these videos. I think that's partly because a lot of these I've only seen once. I think there's one I've seen 3 times or more, there's one I've seen twice, and the other 3 I've only seen once. But I have also read some of them, though not all of them, and it's quite hard to tell because there are some plays that I saw like 5 years ago and absolutely loved, but I haven't read since, I haven't seen since, and so haven't stayed with me as well, even though maybe if I were to see them again they might become one of my absolute favourites. But I did spend a while thinking about this, and I've decided that these 5 are probably my favourites, and if they're not my favourites then a lot of them represent playwrights that I know are my favourites, even though I find it hard to decide which of their plays is actually my favourite, if that makes sense. For example, at number 5 we have A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. This is the only Shakespeare on this list, and I can't say for absolute certainty that A Midsummer Night's Dream is my favourite Shakespeare play, but it probably is. It probably is. In general, I like to say that Hamlet is my favourite tragedy, A Midsummer Night's Dream is my favourite comedy, and Julius Caesar is my favourite history. However, Julius Caesar is sometimes counted as a tragedy, which messes up that list, and even if it's not, I don't know very well how to decide which is my favourite. I think that Julius Caesar is probably the best play, Hamlet is probably the play I have seen the best production of, and A Midsummer Night's Dream is probably the play that has the most emotional attachment for me, so we're going to go with A Midsummer Night's Dream. A Midsummer Night's Dream is, I think, probably the first Shakespeare play I ever saw in the theatre, and I think I saw it when I was probably about 5 or 6. I saw it when I was pretty young, and I've seen it lots and lots of times, and I've seen some really brilliant productions, including one production which was done with a chamber orchestra playing the music of Mendelssohn, who wrote lots of music to accompany A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I also saw a brilliant outdoor theatre production in a theatre in Chester where they had 2 twins playing Puck, which meant the Puck could literally be in 2 places at once, and it was awesome. A Midsummer Night's Dream, if you don't know, is one of Shakespeare's comedies. It focuses on some young Athenians who are in various sort of love triangles, and people are in love with people who are in love with other people, and it's all going a bit wrong, and they end up going into this forest at night where the fairies decide that they're going to make havoc with these people's emotions, and it's very funny, and it's very entertaining, and Puck is one of my favourite Shakespearean characters, and there are so many brilliant scenes. I've seen such brilliant productions where they really capture so many of the amazing things in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it has such a strong hold on my heart because I think it's so funny and so lovely. I think it's one of the most accessible Shakespeare plays and enjoyable for children as well as adults, and I just love it very dearly, and it has some great speeches and I think it's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, that's my 5th favourite play. At number 4 I have A Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill. I really love Eugene O'Neill. He's a early 20th century American playwright who I think is absolutely wonderful, writes the most amazing, heart-ripping tragedies. I've seen several of them and really love them, and A Long Day's Journey into Night is probably my favourite. The production I've seen of it was good, but I read it before I saw the production, and my reading of it I think is what I loved more, and also this is one I studied in my first year at university, and writing essays on it was just wonderful because I adore this play so thoroughly. It follows one family over one day as things about their lives and themselves start to come out, and we get to discover more about these characters, this mother, this father, and their 2 sons. It is a bit of a tragedy, it's not very cheerful, but it's also absolutely beautiful, so well done, with such incredible speeches, so powerful, so interesting, and I just absolutely love it. I cannot recommend reading or seeing this play enough. It is not happy, and it's also quite long, but it is also really amazing, and definitely has a strong hold on my heart and my memory. It's probably one of the plays I remember best of the ones I studied at university, and yeah, definitely one I would recommend. At number 3 I have Flare Path by Terence Rattigan. Again, this is one where, like, I know I love Terence Rattigan a lot, and I think Flare Path is probably my favourite and probably the one that most belongs on this list. But there are a lot of other plays I love by him as well, and the one I saw most recently, Love in Idleness, probably, like, could qualify to beat Flare Path. If I were to watch them, like, back to back in the same day, I might be able to know better. But it's been quite a few years since I saw Flare Path, and despite that, it's really stayed in my head as being an absolutely brilliant play. Terence Rattigan is a British playwright from the sort of early and mid 20th century, and Flare Path is set during the Second World War. I can't remember if it was written during the Second World War, it might have been as well, and it's set at a hotel during the Second World War, and we follow all of the different guests, their secrets, their past lives, how they or their family are involved in the war, and so on, and it's just beautiful, so engaging, so enjoyable, so wonderful, funny at times, but also incredibly moving. And the production I saw of it many, many years ago now was just amazing. And Sheridan Smith was playing the main character, and she was absolutely perfect. And the whole production was so good. It was the first Terence Rattigan I ever saw, and I really, really fell in love with his writing. Since then, I've always tried to seek out his plays because I just think they're wonderful. And yeah, Flare Path must be my favourite, I think. It's just, it's absolutely amazing. At number 2, my second favourite play is another early 20th century Southern American tragedy, and that is Spring Storm by Tennessee Williams. I've seen and read several other plays by Tennessee Williams, but this was the first one I saw, and I think it's brilliant. It's definitely my favourite one by him. It's one of his very, very early plays, in fact, and is quite underrated and rarely performed, but I think it is absolutely brilliant. And we follow a young woman called Heavenly, who is kind of torn between two men. One, a man who she's been sort of seeing for a while, who she really, really loves on a kind of passionate and physical level. But then this other young man returns to the neighbourhood. He's been away for a while. He's a bit more respectable, he's very well educated, and he is the match her family would prefer. And it's about her relationship with these two men. It's also about another young woman in the town, Hertha, who is the librarian. And Hertha, in a way, is my favourite character in the play, even though she's not the most important one, and I think she's such a fascinating character. The plot of the play is amazing, and it's both very funny at times, but also intensely miserable, but also just so, so amazing. And in fact, it's also where the name of my channel comes from, which I feel like I've mentioned before, but not for ages and ages and ages. Arthur, who is the more educated of Heavenly's suitors, has been away sort of learning on the continent, and Heavenly isn't really interested in the kind of stuff he's been learning, but she's quite interested in him in a way. And she sums up all of the learning and sort of interest in education and all of the other things he's interested in that she doesn't really care about as books and things, and that's how she always talks about it. And I found that phrase like quite interesting, and I really like that scene of the play, so that's where my channel name comes from. And yeah, it's a really, really great play. My favourite play is Every Good Boy Deserves Favour by Tom Stoppard. It feels weird to have a Tom Stoppard play as my favourite play, because every other play I've seen by Tom Stoppard I felt either like slightly indifferent to or didn't really like. And in general, his other plays I find quite pretentious, and I find them to think they're cleverer than they actually are. But Every Good Boy Deserves Favour is so amazing, and I think it's one of the greatest plays ever written, and one of the greatest ideas for a play as well, and one of those plays where you could not do that story in any other way. And one of the reasons why this is an amazing play, and why you can't just read it because you have to see it. If it's ever on, you have to see it, but don't read it, it won't be as good, is because it's a play, but it's also performed on stage with a full orchestra. It's set in mid-20th century communist Russia in a psychiatric institution, and some of the patients there actually have mental health problems, and some of the patients there are sort of there as political prisoners, and they've been told that they have mental health problems, whereas actually they just disagree with stuff that the USSR is doing. And one of the people who is there, one of the patients who does have mental health problems, believes that he is the conductor of an orchestra when he isn't. And so there is this orchestra on stage that plays the music that he thinks he's conducting in his head, but at the same time there is this storyline going through about this other man in the hospital who is there because of his political views, and talking about sort of his relationship with his son. The way that it mingles like the music with the rest of the storyline, and the way that it mingles what's going on in the head of the man who thinks he's conducting the orchestra with what's actually going on. It's just so very, 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 very good. And I absolutely love it, and I really, really have to recommend it. If you ever get a chance to go and see it, you really, really should. It was on when I was a teenager at the National Theatre, and I saw it a couple of times and just really, really fell in love with that amazing play. As someone who really, really loves music and is really interested in music as well as interested in the history of Russia, it's just absolutely wonderful, and yeah, really a play that I recommend if you ever get the chance to go and see it. Yes, those are my top 5 favourite plays. Please let me know down in the comments what your favourite plays are, and if you have any recommendations for me. This is the last of my videos on my top 5 favourites, but I will be back tomorrow with another video.